Early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Now we're going to Ghana and Kenya, where for Ghana, we will be talking about something called the nuisance taxes. Femi, do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, we are the media where a review of the report, has to be done, whereby the budget review for Ghana was done, and the Minister of Finance had to address the Parliament, and then concerns were raised as regards the impact of what they call nuisance taxes on the budget performance for the year, and now also it has also discouraged investment as regards the economy.
Now it affects the businesses as well.
Affect businesses. Now they are raising their concerns because they were expecting certain actions to have been taken by the Minister of Finance, who is also the one handling the economy, but they were likely disappointed as regards the report they got, as regards the view of the performance of the budget for the year. And that's why it's calling for attention, and they need to take the right action to ensure that we get the right result. It's often said to whom much is given, much is expected. Much was given to the Minister of Finance, and now much is being expected. Well, let's shift the conversation to our guests standing by. We're being joined by Dr. Ndahiriwe, who joins us from the Department of Development Studies, University of Rwanda. Glad you have joined us this morning, Dr. Innocent.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm also happy to be with you and sharing with you what I have and know about the discussion.
It's patriotic of you. We're talking about Africa here, and I understand why you're passionate and you're ready to talk about Africa. So let's start the conversation from Ghana, where a review of the mid-year report, the budget report, was released, and the Minister of Finance had cause to address the Parliament, and concerns were raised as regards the impact of nuisance taxes on the economic performance for half of the year. What do you make of this development, and what do you think are the factors responsible for this kind of reaction from the Parliament?
Okay, thank you very much. I also tried to follow the discussion and the presentation by the Minister of Finance, Dr. Mohamed Amin. What is happening in the Ghana Parliament is exactly what also happened in Kenya. All in all, we are finding a situation where the population is reacting towards state failure to address issues that concern the population. The members of parliament represent the citizens of Ghana, and in a similar case, the Kenya parliament also represented the population of Kenya. When I was trying to compare the two situations, I remembered one politician called Amilcar Cabral. Cabral was the Secretary General of the African Party for the independence of Guinea and Cape Verde. He said, let me read the quotation, most probably to help us in our discussion. He says that always bear in mind that the people are not fighting for ideas, for the things in anyone's head. They are fighting to win material benefits, to live better and in peace, to see their lives go forward, to guarantee the future of their children. In other words, the population is not looking for philosophy, but they are looking for their benefits. Last time I told you that human beings participate where they benefit. They look at their benefits above all. So the same thing is people are reacting because they are not benefiting anything from the budgets that are being presented. They are looking at their future. They are looking at the future of their children. So if you look at what's, for example, in Kenya, the financial bill 2024 was anti-people. That's why the Gen Zs went into the street. The same thing applies to the budget in Ghana. In Ghana, the businessmen did not see themselves anywhere. The budget did not present the interests of the business population. Because if you look at the budget that was being presented, they are talking about benefiting the banks and interest rates. But as you may be aware, most banks are owned by foreigners. They are owned by pure capitalists who want profit. So they never addressed the interests of the population, and therefore the population did not see themselves anywhere. There's also something which we need to understand, that, and I think I told you about it last time, that the state survives on its population. It's a circle. People work hard, do business, pay taxes, and the government provides infrastructure. What's going on is like a cow that is being milked, but not being fed. When you don't feed a cow and it is hungry and you go to milk it, it will kick you and kill you. So this is now the reaction that I actually see in both situations, both in Kenya and in Ghana. Thank you very much.
Dr. Innocent, when we hear nuisance taxes, could you be specific what these are that is burdening, Ghanaian businesses? We want to know.
I beg your pardon?
I said, we see that it's called nuisance taxes. What is it? Can you be specific what this stands for?
Good. Thank you very much. The word nuisance, you are right. The word nuisance is an image. It's imagery. It's imagery. They don't make sense to the business population. The tax, the taxes don't make sense for the business population, and that one has a very big and negative impact on taxation. They thought the taxes would be revised. They were never revised. The taxes that are existing are anti-people, and therefore they don't make sense. They are a nuisance. That is the image which is being created. It's an imagery.
Now, let's look at the impact of these on businesses in Ghana, typical of African nations where the tax system seems to have some loopholes. What are some of these loopholes you've identified as regards to Ghana's business environment, and how has it impacted businesses and properly investment in Ghana?
You see, naturally, taxes are not supposed to be a burden. Taxes are not supposed to be a burden. If taxes are a burden, then they are not doing what they should be doing. Let me give you an example. If you pay taxes and the government provides medical services, they give you medical insurance. You go to the hospital, find the drugs, find the medicine, find all the facilities that you need because of the taxes that you have paid. All right. So the loophole which is there is that the population is not seeing where the tax is going. If you are a businessman, you are paying taxes, and taxes are favorable. They are making you do profit. But if they tax you and you don't get profit, then you fall out. You don't come out of the business. If you don't do business, then the consequences fall on you and your family. You cannot provide the services you are supposed to provide to your people, to your children. So those are some of the loopholes. So there is a disconnection between what the state is doing and what the taxes are doing. So that disconnection is there. This is a circle which I talked about. So the disconnection must be there must be reason. Let me give you an example of the Kenya case. When the tax bill was made, and the president did not sign it because people had gone on the streets and they had expressed reasons why they are not supporting the bill. So the same thing applies to Ghana. I don't think the businessmen are making profit. They are reacting because it's not favoring them. That's the loophole. That's how I look at it.
All right, I would like you to complement your response by looking at what do you think the Ghanaian authority can do to improve the tax system, because the reports we're getting suggest that most multinationals companies, they are leaving Ghana as a result of the burden provided by the tax system and the bottleneck. If you're in position to advise the Ghanaian authority as regards how to tackle this bottleneck as regards the tax system, what would be your recommendation?
Oh, okay, thank you very much. Normally, there are two ways that the government can generate revenue. One, it is through taxing the population. But they can also get revenue from exploiting the available resources that exist in the country. In the case of Ghana, Ghana is the biggest exporter of cocoa. If they were making chocolates and not exporting raw cocoa, they would get plenty of income. Ghana has a coastline. What does having a coastline mean to a country like Ghana and in Africa? So they must address the governance issues. They must address ways and the financial loopholes. They must address and look at ways of generating revenue and reducing household incomes and increasing incomes to the population. If the income of the population increases, then they will get tax and revenue from the population. This can be done by mobilization of
Innocent?
the population.
Sales tax,
The politicians,
excise tax, stamp duties, vehicle registration fees are paid all over the world. This is a practice, as a source of revenue for every government. But then you say that this has been termed as nuisance taxes. Can you tell us another alternative, how the government can generate revenue?
Governments can do business. Governments can do business. I give you an example. Let the government of Ghana don't export raw materials. Let them do value addition to the raw materials that they have. That would be one of the ways of generating revenue. Otherwise, exporting raw materials is not profitable at all. Governments should now begin doing business. That's how I look at it.
All right, now let's address some of the peculiar economic challenges that Ghana is facing as we speak. Ghana is battling with about 30 billion debt, and it has also impacted government activities and revenue. If you think Ghana can, manage this kind of crisis, what kind of fiscal policy do you think the Ghanaian authority needs to embark on to be able to manage the impact of this debt on the economy?
Actually, as I told you before, the Kenya case and the Ghana case are similar. Both countries are heavily indebted. There is always a trick that the World Bank and IMF do. They encourage you to enter into debts. When you accumulate plenty of debts, they leave you alone. So what the government of Ghana should actually do is to make sure they get alternative revenues, as I have mentioned. Let them reduce expenditures. That would be the best, actually. Reduce expenditures. There is extravagance There is state extravagance in many countries in Africa. Let them reduce extravagance. Let them reduce corruption. Corruption destroys states. Corruption is dangerous. Let them reduce on corruption, improve governance, ensure that there is increased revenue, and by doing that, they will solve their problems rather than running to World Bank and IMF for rescue. They will give you more debts and even killing you even further.
All right, interesting. Now, let's look at the approach to tackling inflation in Ghana, which is peculiar to most African countries. When you talk about double-digit inflation, the inflation was around 53% as of December 2023. But as of June now, it has got into 22.8%. And the target for this year is to achieve inflation rates of about 15%. Now, looking at the approach to tackling inflation in Ghana for the last 6 months, do you think that will help Ghana towards achieving the target set for itself, the inflation rate of 15% by the end of the year? And if this is going to play out, what are some of the crucial steps you will expect the authority in charge to do to be able to achieve this target as regards inflation rate?
When I was reading the budget which is being proposed won't bring down the inflation. It won't bring down the inflation. Once there is inflation, it means your currency is useless before other currencies, which there is need to improve the economy. Improving the economy means that the population is making savings. If the population is not making savings, then you can't move. The population means that the inflation will continue. They can't save because the currency is useless before other currencies. So what they should do is to ensure that their activities that the population are doing, domestic activities, domestic investments should increase. Once the domestic investments increase, then there must be investments. There must be capital accumulation. And from capital accumulation, then domestic economy will improve. But before the domestic economy improves, then problems will always be there. That is my proposal.
So earlier you were talking about what the Ghanaian authority needs to do to able to manage the debt burden, and also some of the fiscal discipline that should be deployed towards achieving proper financial prudence expected of Ghana. Now let's look at the budget cycle in Ghana. You're aware of the development in the last 6 months. For that budget to achieve maximum performance and improve on the report or the record it has achieved in the last 6 months, what do you make of the budget cycle in Ghana, and what do you think can be done to also improve the performance of the budget now that they're moving to another quarter and to the last half of the year? What would be your expectation?
When I read the budget, the biggest problem is debt servicing. The biggest problem is debt servicing. And you cannot service the debt unless you have the money. So what I was mentioning previously was that let the Ghana government improve the income levels of the population that will support them, give them the revenue to pay the debt. That seems to be the biggest challenge. That seems to be the biggest challenge. And there must be policies which are pro-people. Otherwise, this rift between the population, when they say a budget is a nuisance, that the business population is not happy with what has been done. The budget does not address their concern. So if the budget does not support their concern, then many of them will even come out of business. they go away, they will go and invest in other countries. So the economy won't improve. So there won't be any solution. What they should do is let them listen to the population. Let them listen to the population. Let them listen to the business population. Because the previous budget was not helping them. And in this budget, they never addressed the issue. They continue going out of the country. So why can't they address the population? Let them listen to the population. Let them listen to the business community. That is my advice.
All right. Away from what is playing out in Ghana now, let's move on to Kenya, where the Kenya authority is seeking a waiver from IMF as regards the condition attached to its loans. Now, I'd like you to give us a picture of how Kenya is handling its debt responsibility, and also what do you think is largely responsible for the failure on the part of Kenya to meet some of these obligations as provided by IMF?
Yeah. No, it's a similar problem. In Kenya, when the financial bill 2024 was introduced to Parliament, Parliament passed the bill. The budget did not address, the financial bill did not address the concerns of the population. It never addressed the concerns of the population. It was introducing high taxes. People are poor. They can't afford paying the taxes. So in the end, they rejected the bill and went into the street. The Gen Zs, the generation called Generation Z, the young people, very young people, using social media, went on the street. Going on the street, it was a reaction, saying that what the government is doing is against them. It is not it's not supporting or helping them to live a better life, as I mentioned previously. So the Kenya government, listening, I told you, listening to World Bank and IMF is dangerous. First, listen to your people, then you go to IMF if you want to go there. The population and the people, the citizens of the country are the ones who can salvage a situation like that one. So when the financial bill was passed by Parliament and the Gen Z, Generation Z, went on the street, the president did not sign the bill because he was in trouble. Right now, Kenya is still in confusion. Kenya is still in confusion. They are rejecting the bill, and the bill was rejected. But people went on the street and were killed. About 100 people were killed. So there is a rift between the state and population, which is very dangerous. So I don't know how that reconciliation is going to be done. You see? I don't know how that reconciliation is going to be done. The example I gave you, you can only survive when you have support of the population. The cow won't give you milk unless you feed it. So what they should do, let them listen to the cow, let them listen to the population, and they will solve their problem. They are trying to do it. Kenya is reversing everything. They are doing what the Gen Zs want. Secondly, they have tried to reduce on expenditures. They are trying to reduce on expenditures. So the government is reducing on expenditures. So you reduce on expenditures and you save revenue, and the revenue you save, you clear the debts, because if you want more money, then you must pay the debt. You must pay the debts first. That is the trouble that these countries are facing. Then another thing which they need to do, specifically in Kenya, there is high level inequality. There is high level inequality. The income levels between the rich and the poor is very wide. There is a lot of extravagance in Kenya. There is a lot of corruption in Kenya. For example, you find in Kenya a politician owning 5 square kilometers of land. That is inequality. Therefore, there must have reforms. Those reforms must be there. There must be reforms. There must be land reforms. There must be reforms that reduce the inequality between the rich and the poor. If they can't do that, then trouble will always be there. And actually now they have got a loophole. They have got a loophole. Now they are actually holding the state by the neck. So let there be reforms. Let them reduce income levels. Let them have land reforms, and people share the land equally, and reduce the gap between the rich and the poor. That is something they are trying to hide. That's something which they are trying to hide, but they must solve it. You cannot have somebody having 5 square kilometers of land and somebody is having no land. These young people must survive. Alternatively, government can exploit all this land and provide subsidies, provide free education, provide free medical services, provide scholarship and bursaries to these young people. If they can do that, then they will have solved the problem. But there are very many hidden factors.
All right, Dr. Innocent, I heard
Yes.
you correctly where you made reference to the finance bill and the aftermath also and the impact of that on Kenya meeting its target as regards IMF loans. But if I may ask this question, you know, if you look at the accident of the passage of the bill, this bill was passed through the House and then it was unanimously agreed on. Now, don't you think this bill itself, from the way it was constituted and looking at the details of the bill, was a disaster waiting to happen from the beginning? And the parliament was a position to have controlled the, you know, the crisis that came out of this passage of this bill. What does that suggest to you about governance in Kenya? And when it talks about leadership, the role of leadership when it comes to managing crisis, then what options do you think the Kenya authority has as regards generating revenue now that this finance bill has generated a lot of controversy and the dust being raised is yet to abate? What will you expect Kenya government to do as regards the aftermath of this bill?
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Well, the point you raised, the issue of governance in Kenya, is the biggest problem. You know, in Kenya, once a bill goes to parliament, you have the majority members of parliament and the minority members of parliament. The majority members of parliament supported into parliament. So what they should do is that there must be this business of saying we are the majority, everything that comes, we must support it. By supporting it, we are supporting government. There must be logic. People be different. They should be different. Let them look at the logic. You see, the majority members of parliament support the president. So when the bill came from the executive and went to parliament, that's what has been. They supported it because they were supporting the leader. So, but the leader, so the president saw the Gen Zs on the street, and he couldn't do it because if he had done it, they would have even killed him. So I think let there be logical discussions in parliament. They should not sides irrationally. So there must still be within at the level of the executive, level of parliament, and other agencies of the state.
Talking about revenue generation, what's the impact of corruption in Kenya's, revenue generation?
The youth who were on the street. The rich are very rich. Corruption is very high. The rich are very rich because of corruption. They get contracts and they share the benefits of the contracts and don't be doing. For example, if you make a road, under normal circumstances, the road is supposed to help increase one area to another area. So good roads and good infrastructure enable the population to work and get money and increase revenue. And actually, the previous government of Kenyatta in Kenya had into plenty of debts because of very good roads. Right now, Kenya has very good roads. So what they should be doing now to ensure that they make use of the road. There is electricity over 80%. So let them make use of the infrastructure that they have and they increase income levels. That's
All right, Dr. Innocent, let's wrap up the conversation by looking at the possibility of IMF granting waiver to Kenya. Do you foresee that? And if this is going to happen, what are the conditions that may likely be attached to this as we wrap up?
I have never known a situation where the World Bank or IMF does things that does not benefit them. What they do, they may waive off the debts, but into more debts. It is like getting a string out of your neck and putting there another string. So according to me, let the Kenya government leave those IMF loans, and they should think of raising revenue. They should think of raising revenue that will help them come out of their situation. Let me give you an example.
Right, Dr. Innocent, we just have to wrap up the conversation because we're out of time. And from what you've said, it's important for Kenya to also look inward to ensure they have what you call fiscal discipline as regards managing its expenses, to also ensure that they don't run back to IMF or have a repeat of what has happened. And also looking at the aftermath of events that trail the passage of the finance bill, what they need to do to handle that kind of situation. Thank you so much, Dr. Innocent, for your time and your thought. Thank you so much for spending time with us on Early Exchange. Well, this point to the fact that it's important for African nations to see how they can look inward. The template has been African nations, or the experience over the years. You see African nations running to IMF to seek
running and begging.
Yeah,
basically.
You're seeking for waiver, but it's also important to have what you call internal structure, whereby you ensure that you maintain fiscal discipline, the element of corruption, the issue of governance, tax policy, and to create the right framework towards managing some of these loans. You discover that obtaining loan is a universal thing. Even big economies, the US, they obtain loans. But what's so peculiar is, what do you do with the loans? How do you manage them? So for African nation, it's important for us to change the narrative, not just run into IMF.
And they need to be responsible.
Yeah.
To be responsible.
A sense of responsibility.
Yes. And then for your economy to grow, you need to be able to produce. We can't continue to seek from IMF. He said something, Dr. Innocent. He said, you know what? Look inwards. You don't have to always go back to IMF. And it feels like the IMF loans, they give you something and they take two back. It doesn't make sense. At the end of the day, you might have to, go back home. I always say that every time. Africa, we need to come back home. It is peculiar. Africa is peculiar in its own way. So we need to, do our maths and get our solutions that will favor us, that will suit our economy.
Sometimes, it makes me uncomfortable when we talk about Africa in this light, but some of these are realities that we have to face.
Realities.
But I strongly believe
to get solutions, you need to identify the problems.
Yeah, but I strongly believe we can change the narrative. For Africa to change, it will take Africans to change. That's it. Yeah. Nigeria must be great. Africa must be great. And that's the narrative. That's why we talk about Africa every day, to see what we can do to shape policy and change the narrative. On that note, we'll call it a wrap on Early Extinct this morning. Don't forget the conversation continues on our social media platform. We must thank you for spending time with us. We hope that the past 2 hours has been productive for you. But for your voice to be heard, you need to go on our social media platform at Sook News TV to share your view on the topics and for you to do a catch-up on our YouTube channel. Don't forget, Early Extinct returns tomorrow, bigger and better. I am Femi Ayode. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Shadi.
And I am Shadi Uwe. Thank you for watching.
Early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.